Ba All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our stories community. I hope you had a nice start of the day with us, and I really like to thank you all from joining. I see we've got people from Dubai, Canada, Oman, Qatar. It's truly a global movement. I'll take a moment and maybe read a few of these inspiring quotes that you guys were so kind to share, and then we can get started. So we've got success is best when it's shared, definitely, and that's what we'd like to share with all of you guys. Don't let your fear of what could go wrong make nothing happen. Thank you very much, Rakan. And then we've got also, it's a beautiful day in London. We've got someone joining us from London as well. Hello, Zakeera. Where there is a will, there is a way. I can be changed by what happens, but I refuse to be reduced by it. I think these are all very inspiring quotes, and they can set the tone for us today. I'd like to also thank, I think we've got about 11 joining us from 11 different countries. Thank you all. We've got more admitting as well. Great. It's a community that keeps growing. Okay, so we can get started so that we're also on time. I'd love to start the day with doing a bit of a pulse check. So if we can possibly ask you guys to tell us all the feelings that are welcome. We invite you to scan the barcode over here. All right, so like I said, all feelings are welcome, and this is a safe space. Feel free to tell us how you're feeling, scan the code, and we're going to get started and see what other people are saying and how everyone is feeling. I'll give you a few seconds. I see a lot of positive responses. That's great. It's good to start the day with some positive energy. All right. So thank you all for sharing. We've got some people who feel inspired, excited, energized. Some are sleepy. I would say they're joining us from the West Coast, East Coast, but thank you very much for taking the time to join us. People who are feeling anxious and stressed, that's very normal. And we hope that by the end of this roundtable, we're able to shift that and get us all upbeat again. And I think we've got everyone who's answered. We've got 40 answers in there. So what I will do is I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to once again thank you all for coming. And I will hand over now to Lubna Forzley, who is the founder and CEO of Stories, to get us started.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to see so many familiar faces, and a few new faces as well. I'm super pleased to have you with us. We have people joining us today from 11 countries, so I'm really, really happy about that. We've cherry-picked each of you, so I'm really glad that you're here, and I thank you for attending. I thought I would start by maybe just sharing with you the schedule of today, and then I'll shift to sharing my story. The company is called Stories, so we can't let the day go before sharing a story. So today we're going to be together for about 2 hours, a little bit less than 2 hours. We have a few speakers lined up. Each of the speakers is going to be very brief. They're going to speak from 5 to 10 minutes max. We then branch off and do a few breakout rooms. And we do the breakout rooms because we want to hear from each of you. As we grow our company, we want to make sure to take into consideration your feedback. And we've done this roundtable in a way that's very small intentionally, because we wanted to create a safe space for all of you to share your feedback and your feelings so that we can grow the company in the right way. And after we finish the breakout room, it's only going to be 10 minutes. After we finish the breakout room, we're going to come back to the main room, and we're going to have 2 speakers. And one of them is going to be a Q&A with a friend of mine, Stefan Shedletzky. Stefan works directly and personally with Simon Sinek. For those of you who know Simon Sinek, he works with him, and we're going to have a wonderful Q&A about his new book, Speak Up Culture, and a Q&A about purpose, something that I think we're all looking for in this world. So I ask each of you to come back from your breakout rooms and to listen to that Q&A. I hope you can stay with us for the whole 2 hours. We'll try to be a bit less because I understand that you're all busy. And I know that we're joining from different time zones. So we're going to try to finish before the 2 hours. So that's it in a nutshell, what we plan today. Maybe I could just start by sharing with you all who I am and why I started all of this. And let me maybe start by sharing why I chose the name Stories. I chose the name Stories for various reasons. I believe that every story matters. I believe each of us in this world come in with a wonderful story that deserves to be shared. So when I decided to pick the name Stories, I had 3 reasons for it. The first one is very simple, and it comes from my early work experience. The reason why I called it Stories is because the name Stories sticks. It's a simple name, it's memorable, and it sticks. And my first real job in life was with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is the #1 brand in the world. And if there's one thing they teach us at Coca-Cola, it's the power of a story and the power of a brand purpose. Coca-Cola does not sell you a can of pop. Coca-Cola sells you a lifestyle. And so for me, when I chose the name Stories, I wanted that name to stick, and that's why I called it Stories. The second reason why I called it Stories is because I believe that the way I react versus the way you react versus the way anybody else reacts to anything in this world is shaped by one thing only. And that one thing is that story we have in our head. And that story we have in our head can be shifted. And I have witnessed thousands and thousands of stories shift through coaching and through therapy, because I believe that the way you shift your story defines the way you live. There's a quote that I love that says, "With our mind, we create the world." And so I believe in that quote with all my heart. And that's one of the reasons why I called it Stories, because I believe that we can shift our inner story anytime we choose to. And last but not least, I chose the name Stories because that comes from my childhood. I grew up in Beirut in a war zone. And as I grew up, I would look outside my window every day and see bombs falling and buildings falling and people falling. And I would think to myself, what's the point of all of this? What's the point? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? And if God gave me another day, what am I going to do with this day? And what story am I going to leave behind? Because believe me, everything in this world is replaceable. Your house is replaceable, your money is replaceable, your belongings are replaceable. But there are 2 things, in my view, that are not replaceable: the story you leave behind and the purpose you live by every day. And so I really believe that I can shift the way people perceive their story. I believe that I can help people live with a beautiful purpose every day. And that's what I want to set out to do. And I want to do it with founders. I'll share with you another story beyond why I called the company Stories. About 12 years ago, I was working in the corporate world. and I was growing and growing up the ladder. And I was leading a marketing team, and I was tagged as a high performer. And because I was tagged as a high performer in the company and placed on the talent list, they invested a lot of money in my growth and in my development. And while I was perceived as the superstar of the company, deep down, I felt like I was failing. I was a new mom. I couldn't manage my work and life and balance properly. I didn't feel like I was leading my team properly. One of these people who was in my team is Nadine, who actually started the day with us today. She's still on my movement, which is wonderful. And I didn't feel like I was doing a good job. And so I went to my boss and I said to my boss, can you help me and hire a coach for me? Because I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. And he said, you're crazy. You're doing a wonderful job. We placed you on the talent team. And I said, I understand, but I really would love for you to hire a coach for me. So he hired a coach. And that coach is with us today, and she's going to share her experience as well. And that experience really shifted my perspective on leadership. She stayed with me for 2 years, worked with me and with my team. And that really helped me a lot in my view. And then I left the corporate world and became a coach and a consultant myself. And I started working with entrepreneurs. And I fell in love with the entrepreneurship segment. Because I feel like entrepreneurs change the world. Entrepreneurs have the courage to pursue their dreams. They have the courage to live with purpose. But entrepreneurs have a hard time. The reality is 72% of entrepreneurs experience mental health stress. And the reality is 9 out of 10 startups fail because nobody is supporting entrepreneurs. And I kept thinking to myself, if I had the support that I had and I was able to shift my story and I was able to be successful and to lead in a much better way, how could I offer that to all the entrepreneurs and all the dreamers who change the world? And how could I find a way to scale that? So I went and searched about how to set up a coaching business, how to scale a coaching business. And I developed a portal that basically connects coaches with founders. So that they can grow, because the reality is you can only grow your business if you grow. The growth has to start from within. And so that's why I started the business, and that's why I started this movement. I think there aren't a lot of people in this world who are supporting founders today from a coaching point of view, so I found an underserved segment. And I'm really happy to be on this journey, and I'm happy for all of you to join us on this journey. And I'm grateful for your attendance here. And I would like to invite Zakeera, who was my coach and who has worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, to share with us what she's observed with working with entrepreneurs. Zakeera, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in London. It's a beautiful day out here. I'm sorry I won't be able to stay with you for the whole session. So I'm doing an event at LBS. So what have I learned about entrepreneurs? You're all very driven, extremely driven. And in being so driven, you forget about yourself. So one of my early stories is to remind all the founders and say, what does the pilot say when we get on the plane? When the plane's going down, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on others. So what do I say to people I work with once I get to know them? Is don't ignore self-care. You have only so many hours in the day. You need to, it's not about time management. We no longer talk about managing your time. We talk about managing your energy. And that energy comes from within. 9 times out of 10 comes from within, and it also comes from people who surround you. So you've got to decide where your energy is coming from. Create the time and space for little breaks. For somebody on the list who is feeling a little bit stressed or is feeling a little bit anxious, if you are somewhere where you can step outside just into a green space or into an oxygen clean place, step away, do that. Take little breaks, make time for yourself. And then just focus on your 3 things that are driving you. Remember your big why. Why are you doing it? Yeah, remember that. And don't give up on it. So one of my jobs is really to keep bringing back that why. Why are you doing this? And then develop that strategic plan. So it's not all fluff. A coach will push you and will be your thinking partner to push you to come up and to develop that strategic patience and get there with a learning mindset. And finally, don't attach all your happiness to your entrepreneurial project. Look around you and you will see it's all around you. Your family, your friends, the society, the community, it's all there. So we tend to look at coaching from that perspective in terms of being your thinking partners and holding up the mirror for you. So reach out whenever anybody wants to have a chat. Lubna knows how to find me. And if I disappear, have a wonderful session. I have to go and look after my 5 people from Saudi who I have with me today at London Business School. So have a great afternoon, all of you. Thank you for having me, Lubna. And yeah, she was not the easiest coach. I can promise you that. So don't expect me to say nice things about her. She was a nightmare. She was an absolute nightmare. But we got there. We got there kicking and screaming. And you know what? Yeah, she's all right. She's all right. She taught me a lot along the way as well. So enjoy your time with her and have fun.
Thank you, Zakeera. So our next speaker is a person that I have a lot of respect for. Our next speaker is the co-founder of Mumzworld. Mumzworld is a company that I have personally supported and that I love deeply with my heart. Mumzworld is the largest online retailer of mother, baby, and child in the Middle East. And it was recognized by Forbes more than 60 times. And together with the founder of the company, Leena has led the largest woman-led exit in the Middle East. So I'm very happy to have her with us. Leena, I can't see Leena. Leena, you're here. Okay, perfect. You are on mute.
Here we go. So we have good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in a couple of places. I've basically been involved with Lubna on her new journey, which is super exciting. I think crossing the threshold and recognizing, one, that you need the support, and the support is something that's new because your journey is new, is something that we all need help recognizing the need and addressing it. So many people who I've spoken to about getting support say, yeah, I recognize I need the support. I've spoken to other founders and they've basically said, but we don't know how to go about it, or we don't want to publicly go about it. So really being a founder, you're doing this amazing, exciting work of being the hero of your own story. But the question is, do you like the person that you're unfolding on this journey? And along the way, sometimes you lose the drive. So you're no longer in the driver's seat and stress takes over, or the circumstances take over. You could be triggered by the people you work with. A lot of founders change their mode of operation when they have investors. So they become a different person because suddenly they have to operate and decide differently, and the best of them doesn't come out. So that hero that's unfolding as you build your dreams or might not be the hero that you like and respect. And different circumstances bring out different things in you, and it eats away at your resilience. So, this purpose that you set out for, you just need to keep it in check. You need to remember that you're not on autopilot to reach your goal, that you are very aware of who you're becoming and of the moment, and being aware of that moment and getting the help to stay in the moment and make the most of it is very difficult. And I found that very hard because different circumstances brought up different things in me, and that wasn't optimal me. And I got the help, and I worked with a lot of people around that, and I was quite lucky because also as a mom, you're also being tugged and you become another person. You know, you always hear parents say, I don't like the person I become when I'm strict with my children. You know, you might not like the person you are when you deal with your board or your investors. So how do you remove the autopilot and you go to your present moment and you refocus on your purpose? So over to you, Lubna.
Thank you, Leena, for that. So next up we have Heidi. Heidi is an advisor and a fractional chief people officer, and Heidi is helping me grow the business in North America. She has been wonderful and has helped me a lot. And Heidi is going to speak from an HR perspective, because the HR perspective is so critical and important on this journey. Heidi.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm not a founder. I definitely have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I've had the pleasure of supporting dozens of founders throughout my career. And from that experience, you know, I've learned that they get so much support. You all get so much support from investments and loans, advice and counsel from everyone. You know, lots of advice and counsel on your journey to building your business. But that essential piece is always missing, you know, that we're not spending enough money, time, energy, and effort in exploring our founders' mental health and well-being. I think, you know, when I was reflecting on this morning, I was reflecting on the fact that we need to recognize our founders face unique situations. We need to curate a safe space for them, as Leena said, you know, in a way that they're comfortable to express their thoughts, their feelings, and their struggles. I think we need to highlight the benefits of self-care as well. We talked a little bit about that already this morning, you know, recognizing how your productivity, your decision-making, and your overall well-being can actually improve when you're making time for you. You know, investing in that self-care, we need to make it okay for founders to invest in their physical, their mental, their emotional, you know, being, and help them relax and recharge. And I think, you know, setting boundaries as a founder is really difficult. We talk a lot about work-life harmony in my home. You know, my partner is a founder and a CEO, and it's not easy because you always put everyone else first. And we need to create an opportunity and a space where our founders can put themselves first and remove that bias, that it's okay to do that. You know, we need to remind them that taking time for them is an important step in enabling them to make better decisions, increase their creativity, and generally just improve their mental health and wellness. We need them to be leading by example, right? We need to enable them to have the support system they need for that advice, encouragement, and having that friendly ear. And, you know, it's lonely at the top. And, you know, we need to remove that. We need to create an environment where, you know, founders can seek the support they need, and that they know it's a sign of strength and an opportunity for growth and not a weakness. And I think that's why I'm so deeply passionate about the work that the Stories team is doing, because it addresses a really critical need for our founders in today's business landscape that doesn't exist. And imagine a world where we can equip our founders with the tools they need to succeed and foster a supportive community that understands their incredibly unique journey, because we're all on our own journey. And we need to recognize the progress that each of us are having, but we also need to have that safe environment where we can lean in to an environment that is there to support us when we need that extra support. And if we can enable our founders to access the necessary resources they need beyond just investment, but leaning really in to help them create a strong support network to help them move beyond just survival, but truly thrive. Imagine the impact that that can have on our world, both from a cultural perspective, but also from an economic impact. Leena said, you know, there's a lot of companies that don't make it. If we really peeled back that onion to understand why, maybe if those founders had a community like Stories to come together with, maybe they would have been able to make it, because they could share their lived experiences and support one another in a different capacity.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Wonderful. So next up we have Rakan. Rakan is joining us from Saudi. Rakan is the COO of FII Institute in Saudi. He is a motivational executive director. He's a mentor, and he's had a business himself. So he's going to speak to us about his experience with his former business and He's going to speak to us about the ecosystem that he sees every day and the support they need. Rakan, all yours.
Thank you, Lubna. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. I'm speaking to you from Paris, actually. This week I'm in Paris. I'm back to Saudi tomorrow. Thank you all for having me with you today. It's such an honor. I had my own business about 14 years ago. We worked for about 5 years, then it shut down, and it was a major experience and learning period back then, where I thought I had the world in my hands and I was on top of the world with my business, with my family and everything. Lord behold, 2010, the financial crisis happened in the world. The business tumbled and we had to shut down. The wife asked for a divorce. So the whole package, as I've known it back then, got into pieces and I just lost everything. I became in debt of 2.5 million riyals, jobless for 10 months. So it was a very tough period. And back then, now looking back at that moment, I would realize definitely having a mentor or a coach at that moment to help with all the stress that I've been going through, or any startup company would have gone through, would have been a major added value. However, definitely that was a very important learning period in my life. And since I'm here now, obviously I've passed through that with all the ups and downs, and I survived it somehow, alhamdulillah. So I'm here. I'm now running the FI Institute, second to none largest nonprofit organization in the world. We host and develop the largest global investment event in the world. And I started this from scratch. Thank God, not my money, but nonetheless, I put it all together and I started it together from scratch, and it's up and running for the past 3 years now. I've learned a lot throughout the past years in terms of coaching and mentoring, and in terms of mental resilience. My hiccup of 13 years ago made me realize the need of that. And since then, I've started to taking courses, reading, going through mentors and coaches to learn all this, so that in my mind, I want them to make sure others don't fall into the same trap as much as possible. I'd like to share all the learning that I've got. I've created a blog website where I write articles on periodic basis to share the knowledge that I've learned in my way. The way, if you were able to teach something, that means you've learned it. And for me, I'm writing to make sure that I've learned all the readings that I'm going through or all the courses that I'm taking by exposing them to others throughout my blog, throughout my public accounts, so that I can share all of these learnings. One thing for sure, and I noticed this in the comments you mentioned earlier as well, life is too short, so we should not take it as much as serious as it should. We should always realize our priorities. If you know your priorities, you have to always realize and understand, no matter how important your job or project or career is, it's an elastic ball. No matter what happens, if it falls, it will come back again. But what matters the most are the family, and that's more of a glass ball. If it breaks, you cannot fix it. So get your priorities straight and make sure, no matter how many balls you're juggling in your hand, focus on the ones that if they break, they don't come back, and take it from there onwards. Having a mentor is an extremely important element, whether you're an employee in a company or a startup. And it's not just to help you building your business, as much as keeping you sane, keeping you on the course, helping you always remembering your priorities. Because in the midst of everything, we sometimes get distracted with so many issues around us and makes us lose focus on the ball. And you need always an external person or entity to tell you, okay, you know what, these are all distractions, don't mind them, focus, stay the course, because you're always, you forget that there's an end result that you're trying to target, or a goal that you're trying to achieve. And those distractions makes you lose faith sometimes, or lose hope into it. Oh, this is not going to work, let me just drop the whole thing. But stay the course, focus on the ball, and it's okay to have hiccups, and it will have hiccups. Murphy's law, if things are going to go wrong, they will go wrong. So it's just part of life. Using them as stepping stones and continue moving forward to build up on that. If there's anything that I think I don't know if there is such thing today of mentoring for startups to sign up, or even for a certain fee. startup entrepreneurs are the ones who are changing the world. All the benefits that we're having today in our lives started by somebody's crazy idea somewhere in the world who felt something that should not be the status quo and should change. And they were courageous enough and dreamers enough to take it to the next level. So all the best. And that's it from my side.
Thank you, Rakan. I'd like to ask everyone to ask any questions of any of the speakers. We can take 5-10 minutes because I'd love for this to be a dialogue. We're a small group of people and we've designed it intentionally to be small so that you can ask any questions you want. So if I can ask you to just maybe put your hand up or just feel free to unmute, ask any questions, make any comments. We'll take a few minutes to do that before we transition to the next thing. We're going too fast. Some of the speakers are speaking too fast, so we have time. Ilyas, go ahead.
Thanks, Lubna. Hi, Rakan. Thanks for sharing your story and you know, being a bit vulnerable on a pretty tough time in your life. I'm curious to know, because you mentioned that having a coach would have been really helpful. How do you think a coach at that point in time would have helped you navigate that situation? Which sounds, you know, maybe I'm sorry to hear, maybe good for you because you learned a lot from it. But could you share a bit of color on that? Because that was a point that you made, and would love to just hear how a coach would have helped you navigate that better in your mind now that you're looking back.
Sure. Of course, I made the story much simpler because it's now in the past, over 13 years ago. But I promise you, it was a very tough 6-7 months of my life, almost a year, with the dramatic issues of crumbling house and family and a project. A coach would have been probably helped me realize which ball that is glass, which ball that is elastic, helped me realize that what are the issues that I need to focus on and surviving or helping the business survive, or if it's just a dead beat and you're just trying to survive a dead person, so there's no hope of helping that job or project versus focusing on what matters. Probably just helping me seeing the priorities in my life at the moment. So of course that coach would not have came after the matter. That person should have been with me a year or so before that or something. However, I remember when things were just almost reaching to the dead end across the board, I realized, okay, it's too late now, but I really needed external help. So what I did, I went into one of the health institutions here, and I asked, I need to see a therapist. And I sat with that therapist, and that woman saved my life, in my opinion, because I said, okay, well, I'm losing everything. I needed to stay sane. I need somebody to just, you know what, no matter what happens, it will all be okay. You just have to start from scratch. You're hitting rock bottom, so it cannot go any deeper than that. It's just a matter of now, okay, you've lost it all, just come back on track. Let's focus on how to stand up again, get out of that hole that you threw yourself into, and start climbing out of it, and just start from scratch again, or from below zero, that is, obviously, and just go up again. And it worked. Of course, it took a good year of hard work with that therapist, but bless her soul, yes, she definitely helped me get out of that whole situation. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who would like to go next? Come on, we've got amazing insights. Ask us anything.
I'm going to ask a question more for the founders. You know, I'm curious. And again, I know working with a lot of founders, founders get a lot of advice and counsel from individuals, but not so much always the community where they can come together with other founders and really share those lived experience. And I was recently talking to a founder who had to dissolve their business, and they said it was the loneliest time in their life because they had nowhere to go to find a connection with other founders that had gone through that experience, kind of like what Rakan had said, you know, and they had said, and it was so resonated, obviously, given the work that Stories are doing. And they said it was like such a really, you know, pivotal time in their life. And they wanted to be able to reach out to a network to find out where other individuals had gone through the same thing and be able to be vulnerable and be able to gain insight. They were not going this way. They weren't scaling up. They were actually scaling down. But I pressed to kind of explore a little bit more with this founder, even as they were scaling up, what support did they have? And that community of other founders to them was really essential in their growth and journey. And I'm just curious, with other founders on the call, if what are you doing now in the absence of having something like stories? Where are you getting that support and in that encouragement? It is lonely at the top. And again, when I spoke, I talked a lot about the founders that I know don't want to be open about their vulnerabilities because they feel like they need to wear everything, and they wear everything, right? It's all on their shoulders, and it doesn't need to be like that. And I'm just curious if a couple of founders would also be willing to share, what are they doing right now to get the support that they need as they navigate their own journey.
I think, Heidi, thank you for the question. I think the issue, and I think Rakan alluded a little bit to it, is where do you get the right help and what is the right help? And I found that different solutions work at different times, but I don't have like a central go-to platform that kind of gives me all the different angles I need support with. So, I might need support more on developing my people skills just to help me through a certain period in my career, or I need time just to develop my more personal issues. So really just looking at it from different angles. I've used different people at different times, and it's been a matter of luck through referrals. But I know that a lot of founders we've spoken to, and I mentioned this before, although they 100% recognize they need the support, they're like, I need to be the hero, so I can't be vulnerable and I can't show weakness. So I can't go out to the market and say, oh, refer me to someone, I need help. It's tough. After the fact, it's a lot easier to then say, I need the help.
I mean, I think for me, if I could just jump in, I'm Rasha, I'm based in Dubai. Leena, thank you for inviting me to this. It's wonderful to be amongst peers. So I'm 10 years into my entrepreneurial journey, and I've had my fair share of ups and downs. But somebody very early on, when I left corporate and I was setting up, told me that the best thing to do is set up a personal board. And so I reached out to my network of ex-mentors, colleagues, ex-bosses, friends, family that had skill sets that I didn't necessarily have. And I made it a very formal thing. I didn't pay them. I didn't have the money to pay them at the time. I paid them with love. But no one has your back more than people that have really, that just want to see you do well. And so for me, that was really important. So I had, the ex-CFO that, an ex-colleague of mine became kind of my, financial go-to person. Same with, HR and talent issues. I had, the head of talent from a previous role that I worked in. So for me, that's what it's been. And the other thing is I did, similar to Rakan, I think I found myself in very challenging situations over the course of the past 10 years, a lot of ups and downs. And I saw a therapist who, was very, very helpful. I think I felt like I was going crazy at one point. But I think when it comes to professional coaches, what I found is that a lot of it's based on chemistry. And so I can't say I've found someone yet that I felt really understood my needs. And maybe it's because I haven't been looking in the right places. And so I'm really, really grateful to be here today, to connect with you all, because that is something that I would absolutely love to pursue later. So thank you.
Ilyas, you had your hand up, and we have some points in the comments that I will share after your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Heidi, to answer your question, by the way, Rasha's point, Leena's point, exactly on point. What I'm doing, what I've discovered, actually started doing in the last 9 months, is a CEO founder peer group, and it's a small group, 6 people max, led by someone who's been there, done that a few times. Very trusted, very vulnerable space that we get together once a month, and there's some structure and some unstructured time in that. and it's a space to completely open up. And it's all about, I mean, there's a code of conduct that you don't, you respect the space. And it's exactly on point with what was said, is that we're not going to know, but the founders don't get the solutions to all the problems there, but we are in a group of people that also each have their own networks that they've built. And when problems do come up, there's connectivity to the right people within that. It's also a space to say, hey, I'm having this problem. This may be a silly thing because maybe it's in my head. What do you think? And everybody has the opportunity to say, actually, no, this is a real problem. And just having that validation and a safe space to do it is massive. But I will say this, and I wrote this down as a question I was going to ask. Founders, as you mentioned, get tons of support from tons of different places, coaches, mentors, other support institutions. They are not all created equal. And I've learned the hard way that some of them are a waste of time. Some of them can be negative to the business. And I have not yet cracked the nut on how to properly evaluate the different sources of support in an efficient way, because as a founder, time is so valuable. Things change in the days and the weeks, not in the months and the quarters and the years. How do you do that? And for the CEO peer group, it was months and even years of vetting to get to a point where I have the right access to it. So I know I answered your question and I threw another one out there, but we can, I'd love to hear opinions of that when the time is right. Thanks.
Thank you, Elias. Rakan, you had something to say?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add also on Leena and everybody else's comment. It's true. It's very tricky because if you're running a business or you're leading a business, it's so hard to show your vulnerability because you want to maintain the leadership character in front of it, especially your employees or the team. But I think here we have to have that alter ego character, whereas it depends on who am I with, which role or which character should I play with my team at the office. They should not know all the issues and they should trust in their leadership, showing that a strong, confident leader taking them through the sale. And if I'm with my personal board, as mentioned by Rasha or Elias or the group, then I can show vulnerability depending on the trust circle that I have. So we might want to juggle those characters depending on who we are, but we definitely need to find the venting channel that allows us to have that easy way of somebody we trust that we can talk to and express, but having the alter ego character that's in the office versus outside the office or outside the working project. So to help us cope with the whole thing.
Thank you, Rakan. Oscar joining us from Canada. Oscar.
There we are.
You're still on mute, Oscar.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Okay, very good. So I have been hearing about this and something that I have to share. I started my mental health journey 12 years ago. So I'm not as young as I look. I am 50-year-old. Started entrepreneurship 7 years ago. And I can say that besides my personal issues, entrepreneurship has thrown a new layer, several new layers of mental health resources, let's say challenges. And I had to resource myself on every single front, everywhere. Why? Because we as entrepreneurs, and I probably preaching to the choir right now, we struggle for resources, especially after the last 3 years and coming out of the pandemic. It was just not the constraints that the pandemic threw at some of us, the challenges. I designed hardware, so hardware became a bloodbath. By the end of the pandemic, very few of us remained standing. And I can say the following. I lost my relationship due to my own mental issues. I am struggling personally. There are parts that I know that some people will relate to, like substance abuse. I am glad and I'm glad that I am able to join network like this one, like the one that you're starting right now, because there aren't too many. There aren't too many, if any at all, out there. The resources that I found, they were for either personal, people that are willing, somebody else said before, to help you out because they see you struggle and flounder and they want to make a kind of a safe net for you. And I will point a little bit further away from entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship has its own challenges. It's on the personal side, where we all struggle. Some people told me the moment that your relationship ended, it was a good moment. Why? Because that person was not with you for the right reasons. The moment that you find yourself challenging other people for your ideas, it's a moment of growth. My point of view on this side is, first, we need to take a look at our own mental health, our own stability, so that we can actually push and permeate that mental health and stability. I'm at the end of a journey that I started a couple of years ago in Newfoundland. Full disclosure, I had almost a collapse, a breakdown, because nothing was moving. I was pressing and pushing myself too much. My team disassembled itself, and I had to reassemble right now. Right now, I'm in a much better position, but I must say, reaching out to other entrepreneurs is important, and we as entrepreneurs, being open to listening to somebody else. Very poetically speaking, a few days ago, I was in therapy, group therapy, and we were discussing cups. Each has a cup. We all have a capacity to take our own stuff and receive the stuff of somebody else. Having our own stuff when it overflows, finding someone that with whom we can actually offload those problems and help us. But that person needs to have a little bit of space in that cup and then reabsorb. So that's precisely what I'm seeing that you are doing right now, Lubna. Thank you very much for organizing this, for allowing me to pour a little bit of my cup on somebody else's, on a group of people that are receiving it. And I'm saying, I'm telling you, my cup right now, it still has a little bit of capacity to receive somebody else's overflowing emotions. Thank you very much, Lubna.
Thank you for your beautiful story. Really appreciate it. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you, and if you can answer it briefly, and then I want to comment on what you said.
Absolutely.
Do you have a VC, and how was the reaction to your situation?
Did I have, you cut a little bit there.
Do you have any VC support, and how was their reaction to your situation?
A VC as a venture capitalist? No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't. The thing is that I had to reassemble my team. And right now, precisely, we are in the process of onboarding a VC on having somebody trust us with their money to make it grow. And we are pretty much ready on that front. What I've heard, though, I have heard because through the entrepreneurship Vine, I have heard some wonderful stories of younger VCs and younger managers and portfolio managers that are very understanding, that are people that are open to listen to the founder and then the entrepreneur, because they understand that without us, there would not be any investors or VCs. We are the raison d'être of the ecosystems. We are the people that we are on the cutting edge of pushing technological advancement, making markets. It's tough, but it's something that I know as an entrepreneur, and I know that other entrepreneurs do, like you. You wouldn't change it for the world. even though you are on the cutting edge.
Thank you so much, Oscar. I'm going to take one more comment only, and then we have to shift. We're running behind schedule now. Hashem, would you like to? Hi, Hashem. Would you like
Hi,
to
Lubna.
have a question or your comment, and then we'll transition?
I just wanted to add one point. So there are many ways where we connect with the founders. One is the accelerator. We are part of an accelerator, which is actually very helpful to see what others are going through and support and all. Might not work for everyone. I learned one thing which one of my friend told me as a founder, divided into three. Your mental states can be divided into three. 1/3 will be like you're great, you're doing so great, right? So you'll be so excited. 1/3 will be exactly opposite of that thing. Like you're so tense and you don't know how to solve problems. And the last 1/3 is like you don't know what you're doing. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And that's it. And the moment I learned that thing, I felt that okay, this is normal. This is how everybody feels, and it's fine to be like that. And this is exactly how it is supposed to be. And it was a great advice which I received. I thought of sharing over here, which might you can see. So I sometimes go through these three stages in a day itself, or sometimes in a week it will be like divided into three stages. I just wanted to shift and ask one question: what is the driving factor for all of you, so that you are, what makes you be so resilient? And like what Rakan was saying, what is the glass ball which which is very fragile, but what is the holy grail which you are all after? So maybe like what, like people who have sailed across can give us a light and say that okay, it's worth that we could save all these things, and it cannot be just money for sure. I'm so sure that you're all visionary than more than just earning money, right? So what is that thing which you all want to?
I think it would be a wonderful question to maybe explore in the working group, but if we can take maybe one comment from anybody who would love to answer that. For me personally, it's my why. I think at the end of the day, like you've got one life to live, and you've got to make it worthwhile. And so my why drives me. That's my personal answer. Oscar, you wanted to say one thing?
Yeah, for me, it's the result. It's the passion that that brings the moment that your idea, that your thesis, your hypothesis yields result. The moment that it's that aha moment, you have your assumptions, your hypothesis, your thesis, and suddenly you have been working so many months on this idea, and suddenly that idea explodes. That despite being flat broke, despite having all these challenges and problems, that hooks you, or at least it hooks me, and it drags me along, you know, like you are in the right path of delivering something that it's truly gonna make a change or a difference. That's what keeps me going.
Thank you, Oscar. Okay, I think Nadine has two polls for us. Nadine, are your polls ready? We just have two polls to do, if that's okay. And then right after these polls, what I propose is that we go into breakout rooms and have a discussion, a private discussion. And then right after the breakout rooms, we have two speakers that are going to be a little bit longer. We've got my own brother, Marwan, who some of you know, who has raised more than $100 million in his business. He's going to talk about his journey. And we've got, as I mentioned, Stefan Shedletzky, who's a friend of mine and who works alongside Simon Sinek, who's going to talk to us about purpose and about his new book. So Nadine, can you share the polls with us, please, if that's okay?
All right. So thank you, everyone, for sharing and for taking part in this. What I'm going to do is I will share my screen and I will ask you all to take a moment and scan again the QR code and tell us, after everything that we've heard, what do you feel is a term that most resonates with our movement? And then we will also use that same code and answer another question about who do you believe needs to be the ones investing in coaching? Is it the ecosystem or founders themselves? I'll keep the code up, the QR code, for a few seconds. and then I will share my screen and see the results live.
Is it the same QR code for both questions, Nadine?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I got only one question, I think.
If you go to the next slide.
50-50. We need somebody to tip the results over to one side. Are we staying at 50-50?
All right, it's changing.
Oh, wow. All right. Founder mental health it is. Next
All
question.
right. Next question.
So the majority believe that the ecosystem, the VCs, the government should be paying for this. For those of you who shared other, may I ask who the other is? If you don't mind coming on screen and sharing that, or maybe putting it in the chat. We'd love to know.
I said other, and I guess, hi, I'm Suzanne. The reason I said other is what I think versus who's willing to pay is a different story. So where are you likely to find the money to pay? And I would say that's a tough nut to crack, right? And in a lot of cases, the founders really don't have the money. And I think in some cases, VCs do have some resources in some cases, but yeah. So I guess I'm yeah, I don't know. That's why I hit other.
Thank you, Suzanne. Would anybody like to make any comments? I think Nadine, we're good. Yeah. Anybody like to make any comments before we go into breakout rooms? We're good? All right. So it is.
Actually, I was just unmuting. Hi.
Ahmed. Hi, Ahmed.
I'm Ahmed from Cairo. I was one of the people who voted other, and actually my opinion on that is that the government or the ministry, each government has ministries for economics and for investing and for companies, the small and medium companies. So I think that actually the government should have a hand in creating an entrepreneurial healthy ecosystem that actually motivates founders and investors to entrepreneurship and to finding new companies actually. So that's why I voted other.
Thank you so much, Ahmed.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to, we're about to start the breakout rooms. Lubna, do you want to maybe give a bit of an introduction? The rooms are ready. So we've split you up into different rooms and if you're going to just say a few words, Lubna, what to expect.
Yeah, I just want to say that the breakout rooms are meant for each of you to basically share your ideas, share your concerns. We'd love to hear everyone as we grow our business. So please, take active part in these breakout rooms, and most importantly, come back. We're going to be only 10 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we're going to have our last two speakers and end early. So it will only be 10 minutes. Go ahead, Nadine, split us up and we'll have a live discussion. I encourage you to take.
Great. So you will already be assigned to each of the rooms. We've got 4 rooms at the moment and I'm opening them up.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I think I apologize to my group because we got cut off. We were still going, but yeah. Thank you all in my breakout room.
Yeah, the same with us. We got cut off. I'm sorry.
Yes, my group too, sorry.
If anyone was cut off and would like to finish their thought, I know we had that from Lama. Feel free to do that now. We can take a few minutes to wrap up the conversation publicly if you like, Lama and anybody else that was cut off. You're good? Okay. Would anybody like to make any comments before we move on?
I would just say that one of the big themes that resonated with our group, and I'd love to hear from the group if I missed something, is the importance of the connection and looking at the variables of how we're making connections to the founder and the coach, and recognizing different stages in that journey, and recognizing that maybe the initial coach is not going to be the same coach they need 2-3 years out. And so that was really a theme I think that resonated with our group, was the importance of really paying attention to the founder's needs and what the coach is bringing to the table, and looking at possibly making those changes as times evolve, as the business grows.
Thank you, Heidi. And I totally agree with that, because I think at different stages you need different people. And that's why I think one of the things that makes us super unique is that we have, an army of coaches and an army of therapists where needed. And in our group, somebody mentioned, maybe clarify the difference between coaching and therapy. So with coaching, you're looking forward. It's more forward looking and action oriented, versus therapy, which is more identifying the core reason for why you're behaving the way you're behaving, and looking at your past and figuring out what happened in my past that's triggering me, that's making me behave the way that I'm behaving today. And I think people need both at different stages in their life. And just to help I think remove the stigma around this, I really believe that we are born as whole people and we drift away from that wholeness. And therapy helps us come back to that wholeness. And so I really, really believe, that everybody should pursue coming back to themselves, to their own purpose, to their own wholeness. So I would highly encourage everyone to do that. So thank you for taking part in the breakout rooms. I really appreciate your input. We've got our next two speakers here. We've got my brother and Shed. So my brother is in San Francisco. It's like 5 a.m. his time, but he came to the rescue. He is the CEO of Veem. He's raised more than $100 million. We never got along as children, but every time I say I want to give up or I want to quit, he tells me to keep going. So that's wonderful. I also have my other brother here who has supported me so much on this journey. So thank you for that. So I think Marwan has a wealth of experience because he started a few companies, not just one, and he's raised lots of money. So I would love for Marwan maybe to share a story from his journey and tell us anything he wants about resilience. And then we're going to transition to the Q&A with Shed. And Shed, we're all waiting for you. We've got lots of questions for you. All right, Marwan.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Lubna, thank you for having me, and nice to see everyone here. Like it's family on this call. I see my brother, my sister, Mitri, Heidi. I haven't seen you for a long time, so good to see you again. So this is a super interesting topic, and I love the title of this session. I mentioned to Lubna, I was at this other event, and we had a bunch of people talking about things that happened to them during trips. And I told this story, and this guy sitting next to me told me, hey, you should tell this story to a bunch of founders and company owners, because man, I relate to this, and it's like it sums up the story of me and my co-founder. So I'll tell you this story. It really happened to me, on a trip, and it's packed with things that you deal with day to day in a startup world. So this is a while ago, about 20 years ago. I ran Outdoors Club in Ottawa, and we used to take a bunch of people on different events, hiking, biking, all kinds of outdoor stuff. One of the events, we organized a trip to Lake Placid in New York to hike a mountain called Mount Giant, which is like, it's not the largest mountain, but it's, pretty good mountain. It's a 4-hour hike to get to the top, and another 3.5 hours to get down. So I had 7 people with me, and I was leading the group, and we started hiking. We parked, and usually you pack for the day with food and stuff, and we started hiking up. Along the way, that there's 2 parts to the hike. There's like sort of the easy part, and then there's like this tree that sort of in the middle of the path that was sitting on top of the hiking trail. And after that tree, you kind of start climbing up. It's like the tough part. So I was at the end of the pack because it's customary when you're hiking with people, if you're leading the group, you stay behind so that you can see everybody in front of you. And so we were hiking up, and we got to this tree, we rested, and we got to the second part, and everybody, worked hard to get to the top. We get to the top, and it's a beautiful view of Lake Placid. We had lunch, everybody's in good mood. Me and this other guy this is the first time I actually meet him on this trip, stayed behind just to like finish up eating, and just we got into this discussion, and we lost track of time, and just me and him, and so everybody started descending down, and I stayed up with him about 15 minutes later. So 15 minutes after we finished lunch, we started going down. On the way down, the way the mountain is shaped like this, so we got up this way. There's like a steep turn to get to the top. On the way down, we kind of missed the turn to get down. We took another trail and headed down. So about an hour in, we saw this stream of water, and we figured that's the wrong trail. Like, that's not where we're supposed to be. And this is like, at that time, it's about 2:30 in the afternoon. We figured we need about an hour at least to make it back to the top, so you got to backtrack up, and then another 3 hours to get down. And the key thing is to make sure that we get to the bottom before sunset, before everybody freaks out. And so, but what's interesting about this whole thing is when we realized that you're totally on the wrong track, just the number of things that start to hit you. How much water do you have? How much food do you have? Can you actually make it up and down? Because everybody is tired. Like when you hike up and you hike down, you have to hike back up again to the top, and then hike down. There's like, you're not exactly like in the best shape. And then we start to think about, so what happens to the rest of the group? Do they take off? Do they start hiking back up to find us? And so like all these things you start to think about. And so we said, okay, you know what, it is what it is. We're on the wrong track. Let's just start to go up. So this guy that I was with, it's interesting, how when things go the wrong way, what people do. So I'm starting to walk, and this guy, every about 5 minutes, he would yell from the top of his lungs, help, like really loud. And the thing about mountains, when you're on your own, you kind of hear your echo as well. Like he'll yell help, and he'll hear help like 3 times. And instead of being helpful, like it actually started to, it was annoying, but it was important for him to do that, because that's his way of dealing with it. And literally for about an hour, he would yell help, like really, really hard. And so nobody would say, there's nobody on the trail, like we're like probably the last people on the mountain. So on the way up, just before we were backtracking here, trying to make it to the top, we saw this fork where there's 2 trails. And I said to him, like, I think this is where we missed. Let's just go down. And he didn't want to go down. He actually wanted to go all the way up to the top and go back down, because just in case there's another fork and this is not the right fork. And it's interesting because, that's a legitimate thing. It's like, yeah, maybe there's another fork somewhere else that we missed. But the thing about this whole decision making is that if we had to go back up, you'll waste another half an hour to find the next fork, and we actually don't have that much time because we want to make sure that we get there on time. So anyway, we ended up sitting on that fork for like 5 minutes, back and forth, deciding whether we should go back to continue hiking up or just take this path down. So and this whole thing is really about, this is like a story about decision making. What do you do with very little information to work with? So anyway, after we back and forth, we said, you know what, like we don't have time to go back to the top. Let's just go. It's a risk we took. So we took down this path, and on the way down, we found the tree that was over the trail that we stopped at when we were hiking back up. And this is where like there's more certainty is, yeah, we're back on this path. And it's interesting behavior also when we actually got to that, because almost like this sigh of relief. It's like we found it and the search is over. And so now I'm like, okay, well, we found it. Let's just run to get to the parking lot to make sure that whoever is there is not panicking. And he sat down. He sat down for like a good 10 minutes. And it's just like, I just need a break. I'm like, we're fine. I just need a break. And again, this is all about dynamics of how people work together in different situations. Anyway, I convinced him that we should just boot and like start to go, because we should tell people that we're safe. And we like really literally booted down to the parking lot. We get to the parking lot and it's just dusk, like you can still see people around, but like it's borderline. And we get there and everybody, like there's 5 people that they're all trying to figure out, they called search and rescue, and they're trying to figure out how to organize to find us in the mountain because they're not sure we're going to make it out. So we show up to the parking lot, it's like finally, they're back, and we're like, okay, we're all good. Sorry about this. We go to this restaurant to have dinner, and this guy that's with me, he tells me, he's like, man, I'm not hiking again. Like, this is it. I learned my lesson and I'm not doing it. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't lead people again on trips like this without knowing that, because this is too much to think through. Anyway, we go, we have dinner, everybody's relaxed. Like, we're trying to stay up because we're exhausted. And so we go have dinner, have wine, go sleep. Second week, I used to have these things like every Sunday we would do something. So second Sunday, I had another trip organized, and I'm like, I don't want to cancel it. So we decided to do it. The guy shows up. I said to him, like, what are you doing here? Like, I thought this is it. You're done. He's like, yeah, it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I want to hike again. And that was that's the story about this trip. And I mentioned this story because it has a bunch of things in it, and it's all about startups and journeys and resiliency. So a couple of things about this that I learned along the way. So when you hike up on the way up, generally, and this happens to a lot of startups and a lot of groups and founders, on the way up, everybody is a good manager. Teams work well, and things just go. You just have to keep everybody together and everything goes. On the way down, when you actually miss something and you find out that you really missed, this is where you find out what you're actually working with. And different people do things differently. It was therapeutic for my friend to just yell for help, despite the fact I found it annoying, and that kind of useless because you're on your own in this mountain. But hey, like, whatever works for people, it worked. It was important for him to yell from the top of his lung for help, despite probably knowing that nothing's going to happen, but he just kept doing it, and it got more and more intense along the way. So different people deal with things differently in stressful times. And the other important thing about this trip is that people deal with things differently as well when there's lack of information. Like when we get back to the top where we had to fork again to go down, you know, different people behave differently with decisions. Do you want a lot of information to make a decision, or do you just have to go and make the decision and take more risk? So this tests a lot of character and a lot of ability to tolerate, changes that happen and to be resilient in different settings. And then again, when we found that we were on the right path, we got to this tree. Like, I just wanted to go to make sure we get to the bottom of the hill to tell people we're safe, and he wanted to take all his time because he's tired, and rightly so. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that that's not the right thing to do. I'm just saying, like, different people deal with it differently when the search is over and you kind of think you found your way. Some wanted to go fast, some wanted to go slow. All these dynamics play up on these journeys. And the last thing I would say, it was amazing when we got to the parking lot and we found everybody as a sigh of relief. We went to dinner. Just the dinner part, just relaxing and celebrating, was also very important after a tough day. That's another thing about the things is, like, startups are tough, and running businesses are tough, and kind of finding ways to inject some fun along the way is quite helpful to the journey. So that's my story. And the last thing I would say is, despite all this and what happens, when you look back at it, a lot of people say, I would not do it again. I'm done here. But you'll find out that you'll start again, because it's just in the nature of all of us that when you complete something, is so rewarding that despite how tough the journey is, you'll just do it again. It's just part of who we are. So that's it. I told this story to this guy, and he said to me, yeah, just this is a super cool story. Tell it to everybody else. Since Lubna's website is all about stories, I thought I'll tell you the thing that happened to us.
Thank you so much. Fahad, we had a comment from Fahad in the comments saying, I relate to this so much. That's wonderful. Thank you, Fahad.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, shall we move on to the next segment? Let's go to a Q&A we're gonna have with my friend Stefan Shedletzky, and I call him Shed, and a lot of people call him Shed. We, I think, are gonna have a wonderful Q&A. He is about to publish his new book, Speak Up Culture. So we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about everything and anything related to purpose. I have a few questions for him that we're going to go through. And then I know that in my breakout room, we had a good discussion on purpose as well. Do we have two purposes, one for the business and one for ourselves, or do we have only one? We had, many questions come up in our breakout room. So we're going to do that with him, and I'll invite you all to share any questions you have. He's a wonderful speaker. Shed, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Super happy to have you.
Yes.
Tell us.
Delighted to be here. Yeah, sorry, I wish I could join from the beginning, but I had my most important job this morning, which was being a dad, so needed to drop off kiddo at school. So glad to be with you now.
Thank you so much. So you're about to publish your new book, Speak Up Culture. Tell us a bit more about that. What is Speak Up Culture and why?
Yes, so a Speak Up culture is an environment in which people feel it is both safe and worth it to speak up, to share their ideas, to share their concerns, to disagree, especially with senior leaders, and even to admit mistakes. And when we have a Speak Up culture, we simply get the ideas, we get what our people are thinking and feeling. And there's sort of a phenomenon that as we're a founder or as we're a leader in a room, the more senior we get, typically the further away we get from the truth, because we are hardwired as human beings to offer those with status or our leaders with deference. So we can talk smack about a leader when they're not in the room. They come in, hello, ma'am, hello, sir, right? That's just how we work. And as leaders, our whispers are shouts and our tiptoes are foot stomps. And so it is so important for people who have authority, for founders, especially as it goes from a garage with 3 people to now 15, 60, 65 people, where you're no longer, Fahad or Dragan, your CEO, your founder. All of a sudden your title walks in with you, and people treat you differently. And so, yeah, a Speak Up culture is how can we proliferate environments where people actually say what they're thinking and feeling, because it's so important for the health of our culture, the health of our people, for creativity, for innovation, and for avoiding really big, bad mistakes.
Wonderful. And why did you start that? Why did you start writing this book?
A couple reasons. So one, I grew up with a stutter, so I have a speech impediment. I still do. I married a speech therapist. Good choice, not just for me, more so for my children. And so I grew up knowing what it felt like to have something to say, but to choose to be voiceless or to feel voiceless. So that's one. And I've sort of made it my life's work to help people both find and use their voice. The other is I've been parts of cultures and relationships where there is a speak up culture, and it's marvelous. Sort of the depth and breadth of what we can discuss, the friendships and relationships, the genuine friendships that can form at work. It's beautiful. I've also been part of cultures and organizations where there isn't a speak up culture, or there once was, but because of a change in leaders, no more. And it's awful. It is not a speak up culture. It is more a zip it or a shut up or watch what you say culture. And not only is it bad for the health of the organization and its employees, it's exceptionally dangerous for the operation of a business. And whether or not you're in a business that's life and death, like aerospace or healthcare or law enforcement or military, if you are in a position of leadership, we know from Gallup and the National Institute of Health and UKG, like we know it as a fact that people's relationship with their direct leader has more of an impact on their health than that of the relationship with their family doctor or therapist, if they have one. And that relationship with our boss is at par with our relationship with our life partner or spouse. And so our relationship with our boss, regardless of if we're in a life and death industry, literally has a life-feeding or life-depleting impact on people and their well-being. And that's why this is deeply important to me.
Wonderful, beautiful. And you mentioned in your interviews and in your book the importance of having role models and having coaches, and that there is no right or wrong answer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, anything in our human dynamic, like it's all gray. Like there's no black, there's no white. It's gray. It always requires context. And so, I think it's very easy for us sitting on the outside in judging, but to have empathy and to be in someone's shoes and to go through what they're going through. I've sort of released this belief that there's a right way and a wrong way. There's your way, right? And I think for our own way, I think we need to, first and foremost, work on ourselves. So I've participated and facilitated and observed and seen hundreds and hundreds of leadership development programs over the course of my life and career. And I've noticed a pattern, maybe you have too, that every single leadership development program starts with a module on self, every single one. And there's no mistake of it. How can we be an effective steward or leader of others unless we find security in our own instrument, right? What we're able to do, what our limitations are, where we need help, how we can better harmonize with others. And I've worked for insecure leaders, and they are destructive, not on purpose. They're just working with an incomplete set. They're not aware of their impact on others. They're making it up as they go, but it's unfortunately often destructive. And so I'm really attracted to and want to support humble leaders and secure leaders, which is interesting because humility is an admittance of fallibility. Humility is, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, which is all of us. Like no one of us here is perfect and can do all the things. That's why we have a team, right? And that's why we have differences that can both frustrate and complement each other. And so I'm a big believer in leaders working on themselves first to find security and then in themselves, such that they can help others find security in their selves as well. And we don't play the same instrument. We play different instruments. That's why we're a team. And so I think when we learn about ourselves, we learn about what our strengths, our limitations, our values, our beliefs are, we can find our right way. And I think coaches, mentors, people can help us stay on that path. because we cannot be objective with ourselves, right? We can't read the label on the jar when we're stuck inside the jar ourselves. So yeah, I've let go of like the way I do it is right and the way they do it is wrong. No, like we're all trying to find what is our version of the right way, and to get help on the path to keep on that right way for us.
I love that. And I love what you say about starting with yourself first. And as we say in our company, like our tagline is your business grows only when you grow, because there's no way your business can grow unless you grow yourself first and foremost.
Yep, totally.
Let's shift the discussion maybe to purpose. I noticed somebody in my breakout room had Start with Why, the book right behind them, which is wonderful. So I know you've done a lot of work with Simon Sinek in the space of purpose. And there was a discussion in our room whether we have two purposes, one for our business and one for us as individuals. What is your view on this?
So we can have nuanced purposes, but they all live within the nest of our sort of greater purpose. Typically, we've found by the time you're about 16 to 20 years old, your purpose is fully formed. And that's both based on brain development as well as enough life experience. And so the youngest person that I've done a purpose discovery for was 16. I still know her. I know what career she's gone into, and it hasn't changed. Ironically, she felt the need to go through it again when she was about 25, 26, as she was making some career decisions. And it was the same thing. She found different or better words for it, and she had 10 more years of life experience, but it was the same. And so, you know, for example, so my purpose is to engage with people in meaningful ways so that we connect with depth and live in a more fulfilled world. That's my north. That's what guides me. That may show up in slightly different ways as a dad, as a husband, as a friend, as a son, as a brother, as a professional, but it's still within the nest. So if you think of your own career and life as a large, complex corporation, you can view your purpose as if it's a tree, right? And every tree has a trunk, a foundation. It has a root system, right? So the trunk and the roots are the origin. That is your purpose. Yet there are different branches. There's accounting, there's finance, there's R&D, there's the Latin America office, which might have its own sort of subculture, its own sub-purpose, but it still has one central. If a product or an area of the business has a totally different purpose that's outside of the tree and outside of the nest, good opportunity for a spin-off. So I would say that we don't have multiple purposes. I think we have one purpose, but we can find multiple ways and multiple expressions to bring that purpose to life.
Thank you. And the $1 million question, I have my own answer to that and my own version of the answer to that, but is how do you find your purpose?
Go ahead.
No, you go.
So the way I view purpose is your purpose is an origin story. It is who you are, and who you are is where you come from. And so one of the greatest ways to find your purpose is to look to your past. A lot of people will say, look to your future and describe who you wish to be aspirationally, which can be valuable. There can be vision there, but vision without a solid foundation can simply be hallucination. And so I wouldn't want someone to aspire to be like, I'm going to say, I'm going to be a ballerina. It's like, like, should I? Like, not sure that's really going to happen for me. So I think completely being aspirational can get us into trouble. And so the way that I would recommend it is you actually go to your past and you think back to your earliest experience as a kid, your school-aged years, your favorite, least favorite teacher, mentors, fulfilling days at work, unfulfilling days at work, and you literally chart, as Simon calls it, the peaks and valleys of your life. And in the peaks and valleys, sort of imagine a sheet of paper that down the middle is a line of emotional neutrality. And then peaks are experiences in your life or career that you would love to revisit. They were joyful, they were positive, they were fulfilling. You would love to relive that experience. Valleys are experiences that you don't necessarily want to relive or revisit, but if you're really honest, it helped you become who you are today. You know, one of those experiences for me was at my grandmother's funeral. Don't want to be back there, but the moment of connection and empathy that I had with my mom, I would never trade that feeling for the world. We had a hug, and I had a glimpse of empathy into her life that I wouldn't trade. Don't want to be back in that room. It was a valley, but it was quite fulfilling, actually. And now the main thing is that you cannot go into the restroom or the washroom or your house, look in the mirror and say, what's my purpose? And expect to get a good answer, because what we do need is the objective perspective of another. Like I said before, it's very hard to read the label on the jar when you're stuck inside the jar. And so you can chart sort of these peaks and valleys, begin to share it with a coach, a mentor, an objective partner, and the consistent patterns and themes across those stories of what you value, what you care about, become very apparent. The last thing that I'll share is, so often our purpose lives in what have we overcome or are overcoming, and how can we help others do it as well. It's step 12 in the 12-step program, which is service to another. So for me, there's no mistake that I've written a book called Speak Up Culture, because of my experiences of not having it in the past, also having it in the past, and wanting to create more of it. And so for me, it's a very purposeful endeavor, because it's aligned with what I've had to overcome in my own life and career.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I agree with most of what you said. I believe in connecting the dots backward, and I believe that purpose is going back to your own nature and going back to your own wholeness and reconnecting with yourself. And I believe that purpose is found when you lean into the pain and when you tune into your own pain and not run away from it, but rather face it and tune into it and figure out the recurring pain that you've had in your life, and then find a way to solve it, and then go solve it for others. So that's my version of the story.
Yeah, pain is data.
Pain is data. Right. Why do you think it's important for organizations to start with why?
I think it is important for individuals and organizations to start with why for a couple reasons. Why? One, why? That's funny. One, it's a lot more meaningful and fulfilling, where you're not just making widgets or turning a profit, but you're actually solving a human need and progressing a human need. You also have a basis and a formation to attract and inspire people, whether that's employees, customers, vendors, fans, right? There are people who literally have a tattoo of Harley Davidson on their shoulder and they don't even own the product. I have never seen a Procter & Gamble tattoo on any shoulders out there, right? That when you actually stand for something and meet and solve a human need, you can attract a loyal fan base. So that, that's one. For me though, it's start with why, not end with why. So it is first having clarity of what your why is and being steadfast with it. It can help you make really hard decisions that are very clear because you look at what you believe and it's very easy. It's then discipline of how you bring it to life. If you just start with why and end there, you successfully live on a hippie commune and nothing gets done, right? So it's clarity of why, discipline of how we bring it to life, and consistency of what we do. And this is the golden circle model that Simon talks about in Start With Why. So why gives us direction, but how shows us how we can walk that path. I like to relate our life and career leaning into the infinite game as if it's a marathon, where our purpose is the reason that we start running the marathon in the first place. Our vision is the finish line that we'll never actually reach, but we have mile markers along the way, right? Which are our goals or OKRs or missions. And then as well, there's a way in which we will run the race ourselves in line with our ethics, in line with our strengths, values, and beliefs. That's how we do it at our best. So why gives us focus? Why gives us reason? And then I think there's opportunity as well to act in discipline and in line with who we are, what we believe, what our values are.
Thank you, Shed. I'm conscious of time. We're about to wrap up. I would love for anybody who has any questions for Shed to ask him anything about finding purpose, why it's important, how to do it, anything that comes to your mind. We've got 10 minutes. Feel free to hop on the screen and ask any question.
I have a question. It's about the speak up culture. So one of the things you mentioned was that it's really important, especially as a founder, to create that kind of open, transparent culture. But what happens when you've got multiple founders? So you've got co-founders, which have very different value systems and very different, they're bringing very different corporate backgrounds or what happens then? How do you align that culture?
Yeah, thank you, Rasha. I think you have to do the work to have, and sometimes bringing in an external facilitator, an objective facilitator really helps here around who are we? What are our guiding principles? How do we behave with one another? And can we get to a form of some level of agreement with that? So like we have that in our own household. It's happened very organically, but we have our own little founding organization. It's me and my wife. We've hired 2 employees, well, more than hired, but they're 7 and 4-year-olds, right? But my wife and I, because fortunately we're a good match, we have created some guidelines. We are helper people, and we can always find other helper people. We treat other people with kindness and respect, even if we don't like them. And what's our last one? We have one more. Oh, yes. We can talk about our feelings, especially the hard ones. Like those are the 3 that like we completely agree on. And when we get into tension or, you know, there isn't like, we're not at a good place, we lean back into those. And so I think it's important for a founding team to see if they can get to that consensus and have it be objective, you know, like the 10 commandments on the wall, because anytime someone's behavior strays outside of those guiding principles or those commandments that we all agreed upon, we don't have to point at the person, we point at the wall and we go, hey, I don't think we're living this one right now, and I think we need to shift. So if you can't get to those 10 commandments or those guiding principles, I would recommend that may not be the right team to be working on this. And it's time to see if you can exit someone. But can you get to a common understanding of this is how we behave in our culture here? And then keep pointing to it. Because our culture equals, I made a little equation for this. So our culture equals our values multiplied by our behavior, and it's raised to the power of influence. So, and I just put that in the chat. So by all means, we should have values, you know. Enron had values, the famous accounting scandal company. They were respect, excellence, integrity, which is hilarious, and communication, right? And they're all meaningless because I don't like, do me a favor, Rasha, more excellence this afternoon, please. You're like, okay, I'll get right on that. But if I were to say, do more of your best work, now we're talking, right? And so I think we need to define our values, not just as adjectives, but as verbs or action phrases, and give people behaviors underneath such that we can reward and recognize people when they live them and provide coaching, feedback, discipline if necessary, or offer them to the competition if they repeatedly live outside of them. And then it's raised to the power of influence, because the behavior of a founder or a senior leader simply matters more than someone we hired last week, unless they were handpicked by a senior leader. So a few ideas, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shed. Any other questions for Shed?
Shed, thank you. It's so insightful. Great talk.
Thank you.
I am looking forward to read your book. Funny you mentioned Enron, because I worked for the management consulting company at the time that was actually helping.
Was that Arthur Anderson?
Yeah. And
you might know my father-in-law. Carry on.
I'm not going to comment.
He didn't work at Enron. Okay, carry on. Sorry, Dragon.
What a disconnect was there between those writings on the wall that you're talking about and the actual actions, when they really wanted to squeeze employees like lemon and throw them away genuinely. And they proclaimed all the people value culture on the wall. So that's a prime example in the large corporation how things did not work well. On the other hand, I wanted to comment, you mentioned, actually, Rasha, you mentioned if you have co-founders, My experience was that when we hired the external coach to help us set up those guiding principles, we fell apart. And the partnership fell apart because then we realized with the help, quote unquote, help of others, we learned how different views we have and different values, and our company fell apart. That's what I wanted to share. And there's so many other things that you mentioned that I like, that we can talk for hours.
Yeah, great. I mean, there's value in difference. So it's still good to go through that process to go, can we make it work? And do our differences actually complement each other, or do they clash?
They clash.
So better to figure that out and then make changes and let that one keep going.
They clashed, and just to make an analogy, in real life, I've heard from marriage counselors that they don't necessarily always try to make relationships work. They also try to make individuals happy with the outcome, not necessarily to make them live together. So if you take that as an idea, you can put it in the concept of your company, that your relationships with your co-founders, partners, etc., doesn't necessarily have to last forever.
Sure. I'll also just say out loud that, you know, I wrote this book as a philosophy book disguised as a business book. And really what I'm really talking about is peace and harmony. And so I leaned into a friend of mine whose name is Juliana Tafur. She's a Colombian immigrant and now is in the US. She is a documentary filmmaker. And she made a film called Listen Courageously is her website. I'd highly recommend it. And what she did is she took immigration, gun reform, and abortion rights. And she took people on opposite sides of each of those hot button topics in the US, invited them to participate in activities to see if they can get to some sort of common consensus. And the reason all 6 of the participants agreed to participate in this was so that they could use the platform of this documentary to show others that their perspective was right. And what happened is nothing short of fascinating and inspiring. So across gun reform and abortion, the 2 participants ended in tears. They ended in hugging. They didn't change their views, but they could understand why the other people made the choice that they made. And it was brilliant. Ironically, the couple that discussed immigration, one was a first-generation immigrant to the US, the second was a second-generation immigrant, and the first-generation immigrant had to leave the conversation citing that the other person's views were too reform and were anti-American, even though that they themselves benefited from immigrating to America in their lifetime. It was mind-blowing. But what it points to is, I think we can have differences and still find commonality. I think it is extremely important. And if we do so and we get to the point where we should actually separate, that's okay. But yeah, I think a speak up culture is often, how can we actually find value in our differences, even if it means that we should shift?
Thank you. Maybe one last question and then we'll close for the day. I know we could stay here all day, but if there's any last question for Shed or anybody.
I wouldn't mind asking, hate to take the last question here, but really interesting, Shed. I mean, I would say I love that you're honing on speak up culture, and I learned the hard way, and I'm actually actively working on this right now for my business, saying things the way they are. And a lot of it was inspired by the book Radical Candor. That you know, embedding this into the company and saying that it's okay to share challenges and it's okay to challenge, and different cultures have different acceptance of that type of thing, different from different parts of the world. But it is so powerful, and I'll say that it has a direct impact. It has had a direct impact on my stress and the ability to share things among the different people, and it increased the excuse my language here, but give a shit factor for my senior management team, it's amazing how they all rallied around once that has started going out. So that's in progress right now. I am very excited about your book, and I'm gonna probably plug you here, but I'd love to know of the group here, because you said it's a bit of philosophy disguised as a business book. What could the group here, and maybe I'll selfishly think of myself as well, get out of that read for Speak Up Culture, and how implementable is it in our lives? Because I'm not going to ask you to summarize your book. I'm going to go probably read it, but I'd love to know that.
Okay. I'm happy to summarize my book, because a lot of book sales just make good coasters. So I'd rather impact than make a book sale. So the question is, what difference will reading the book make, and how implementable is it? Is that right?
Yeah.
So how much time do you have, Elias? So I mean, I opened the book with a pretty stark example, which is the example of the Boeing 737 MAX, where that is an example of a plane that was made in the vein of profit. It was an unsafe plane, and people internally to that culture spoke up and said, this is not a safe plane, and they were punished for it. And it led to whistleblowing. And so I open with the stark, very real life and death example. I then go into why a speak up culture. I mean, like, how could something like that happen? And there are seemingly good people who can do hard and wrong and awful things. It's called ethical fading. And then I go into the benefits of having a speak up culture. I really focus the book on the behavior of leaders, how to select better leaders, how to support leaders better, and then the importance of culture. I talk about how culture is like pickle brine. So you can take a world-class cucumber, put it in awful pickle brine, and we, my friends, have an awful pickle, which has no fault to the cucumber, no fault to the person. It's about the environment that they're in. And then I talk about how the two pillars of a speak up culture are safety and impact. So ideally, the two questions that we ask ourselves before we make a choice to speak up, whether conscious or unconscious, is it safe and is it worth it? Right. And I think previously we've only really looked at, is it safe? But if it's safe but won't lead to any meaningful change, apathy sets in. And so ideally it is both safe and it is both worth it. But what's also really interesting is sometimes it's not safe, but it is worth it, which is when we get courageous leadership and whistleblowing. So, and then I go into the two actions to create a speak up culture are encourage people to speak up and then reward them when they do, especially if they bring up hard things to hear. You have to reward the behavior, not the message. I do lean into Radical Candor and Kim Scott's work. Chapter 9 is about feedback. It's called Feedback is a Dish Best Shared, Not Served. And so to your point, how do we create these environments where feedback is a dialogue, right? Not a message to be shared. So yeah, that's the journey that we go on. I think there's, it is not, I'm not so bold to claim that it is a how-to book, but there's lots of practical and tactical things, both for how to do this in an in-person setting as well as a hybrid and virtual setting as well, because there are nuances. So that's a little bit more depth, Elias. I hope that's
that's great.
helpful.
Thanks. I love that you shared just the key concepts, and that I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shed, for this wonderful talk. We appreciate it. And I think that brings us to the end of our roundtable. I'm so grateful to each of you for coming. Maybe drop a note in the comments if you've appreciated it, if you've learned an insight today. If you'd like to be part of our future roundtables, we're going to be doing them very regularly, so let us know. We'll also be sending you an email, just a thank you email. Feel free to follow our socials. Refer us to anybody that could grow our movement, whether it's a founder, a company. I want to thank all the speakers who spoke today. I appreciate all your support, the speakers, the advisors, and each of you. Honestly, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening or day, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. if I can have just a few people stay, Nadine and Mariam, Ahmed.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Lubna. Talk soon.
So much, everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and evening. Thank you.